Hi, this is Chris Peters for the Hampton History Museum, and today we're going to take a few minutes to talk about some of the tools and weapons that would have been used by the Powhatan Indians in Virginia. So in the case next to me, we have some really good examples of the tools and weapons that would have been used here before the arrival of the English. At the top of the case is a stone axe head similar to this one. Now the one that I'm holding is a reproduction. This is not an archaeological artifact. But it's a good reproduction. This is made out of bluestone from the Appalachian Mountains, which is where the Powhatan Indians probably got most of their stone from. If you look around Tidewater, Virginia, there's not a whole lot of rock here. And you can't make something like this out of dirt or sand. So they would have had to trade to get stone for making their tools. But once they've got that raw chunk of stone, they would have used it against a harder grindstone, and they would have slowly ground away the material until they get a nice beveled edge like the one we see on this axe head, or the axe head in the case behind me. Now once you've created your axe head, you need to put it in a handle. So they would accomplish that most of the time by taking a pretty stout piece of wood and burning a hole through it, and then inserting the axe head through that hole. So you can see the wood surrounds both sides of the axe head. The other method they would use is taking green wood, a sapling, and they would split it, wrap it around the top of the stone, and then bind the handle together so that either way you've got an axe head on the end of a handle. Now this isn't going to be as sharp as a stone axe would, an iron axe would be, so it's going to be used a little bit differently. When we think about axes today, we think of lumberjacks in the American West chopping down giant trees and using big two-man saws. The Powhatan Indians aren't going to be able to process wood in quite the same way. So instead, they would build small fires around the base of the trees in coastal Virginia, let the fire do a lot of the work, and then they would come in with these axes and chip away the charred wood. Works perfectly well for a job like that. That's also how they made their dugout canoes. They would burn the surface of the log and then chip away at it with axes or oyster shells or just chunks of stone, whatever they had available, until they were able to dig it all the way out into a canoe shape. So this axe is going to be used in conjunction with fire to make the work more efficient. It can also be used as a weapon. This would be a pretty fierce weapon in the hands of somebody that knows how to use it. Swinging this piece of stone at someone's head or their arm or their leg could certainly cause a lot of damage. And this is where we get the word tomahawk from. This is what the Powhatan Indians, Algonquin-speaking Indians, called a tomahawk. There are a lot of words in the English language today that come from Native American or Virginia Indian words. And tomahawk is an example of that. In the middle of the case over here, there's a bunch of smaller stone points. Now, the stone axes are made by grinding. The stone points are made by flaking, by chipping away the stone in a process that's referred to as knapping. And you can make some very fine points with that, and most commonly these are going to be used for the points on arrows. So the arrow that I'm holding in my hand is another reproduction, and just like arrows all over the world, you have to have the arrow shaft, you have to have a point on the end, and you have to have fletching of some sort to help the arrow fly straight. In this case, they're using feathers, and the point is made out of knapped stone. Now, Powhatan arrows are really cool because they can do something that most other arrows cannot. The shaft, the shank of the arrow, is made out of river cane, which is hollow. And it's also pretty hard, so just like arrows made out of hardwood around the world, it's going to be pretty durable. But what really makes this unique is the end of it. So the way that the arrowhead, the point, is shaped is done just like it is everywhere else in North America at the time. You're taking a large flake off of the right kind of stone, something like chert or obsidian or flint, and then you are slowly breaking it down using smaller stones, pieces of deer antler or hardwood. You're hitting it and chipping it away to get to this final shape. What's really cool, though, is the way that it attaches to the arrow. When a Powhatan hunter or warrior fires this arrow, it's going to hit its target, and then the end is detachable because that point is connected to a short piece of hardwood with a tapered end that sticks into the hollow end of the river cane. So now when you shoot this arrow at a deer or a person, the arrowhead goes into your target, and either when it impacts or as the animal or person starts to run away, when this arrow hits something like a tree or a bush, it's going to fall off and leave the arrow point behind. This is not something that you would have seen in most of the rest of North America. So this is a technology that was almost unique to this part of the world, and it worked pretty well. You didn't have to have that many arrows. You could have a handful of arrows with you and a bag full of these points, and every time you shoot the arrow, you can then pick it up off of the forest floor as you chase down the animal you've shot, and then after you process the animal, you'll be able to get this point back, hopefully. If you hit a bone, it might be broken, but hopefully you can get this part back as well. Now, processing the animal brings us to the larger point in the case here, and that's actually a knife blade. It would have been attached to a handle to look like this. This is also made by knapping, so you're going to start with a large piece of stone that will break and sharp edges, and you are knapping it, you're breaking it down to get to the shape that you want. Once you have that large point, you're then going to attach it to a handle, perhaps a piece of wood like this one, or maybe a piece of bone, to turn it into a knife. And this is going to allow you to process any of the animals that you're hunting here in coastal Virginia, or any of the seafood that you catch. You have to be able to break down fish. This will do the job. Now, all of these tools can also be used as weapons, and that brings us to something that you don't see in the case here, and that is an item that was exclusively used as a weapon. Bow and arrows used for hunting. It's also used as a weapon against people. Axes are used as tools. They can also be used as weapons against people. The final item that I have here is called a monocoque. This is what the English referred to as the Powhatan's wooden swords, and you can see it's got a fairly fine edge on it. This is not going to cut you, but it's a pretty heavy club made out of hardwood, and with that narrow edge on the end, if somebody swings this at you with some force, that's certainly going to break your arm or your leg or your head. So the monocoque is not meant for hunting. It really serves no other purpose except warfare, and this is one of the weapons that would have been carried by the soldiers throughout Senecomico, throughout Tidewater, Virginia, during the period that preceded the arrival of the English. Now, at the bottom of the case, we also have a couple of examples of pottery. So two fairly small pots that would have looked like this one. And this is also a reproduction. Anything you see me handling is going to be a reproduction, not an original artifact. And the pots that they used would have had a tapered point like this. It's believed that this was done so that the pots could be pushed down into the ground next to fires for cooking. So this is a cook pot, and the two examples that we have in the case here are originals. This is a reproduction. It's a little bit bigger, but they have found pieces, archaeologically, they have found pieces of pottery that would have been this big. So they certainly did make pots of this size, and perhaps even larger. Now, all of the items that you see in the case next to me are actually on loan to the museum from the Virginia Department of Historic Resources, and they are not local. So these are not specifically items that would have been used by the Kicquetan Indians, but they are good examples of the tools that would have been found in the area. And archaeologists today still find items like this all over Virginia, including here in Hampton. So, thank you for watching, and I hope you come back for more videos in the future.